how to get into TV, radio, and film. And if this is the first time you're joining me, a warm welcome to you too. Allow me to introduce myself. My name's Samina Kiyani. I'm a broadcast journalist and TV producer with over 25 years experience working in this business. And I'm using that experience now to be of service to you guys, young people who want a career in media, by creating a resource for you to refer to. I'm doing a series of interviews with some seriously talented industry professionals, and they share their pathways into business, the challenges they've had to deal with, and more importantly, how they overcame them, and also details and advice about how you too could break into TV, radio, and film. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. He's a cinematographer. He was also selected as a BAFTA Brit to Watch in 2011. And more recently, he's debuted as a producer on his short film, Elephant. Welcome, Damian Daniel. Hi, Damian.
Hi, Samina. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So tell me, how did you break into this business? And also, what inspired you to get into this business?
I mean, for me, getting into this business, I don't come from a photographic background, but I've always loved films. I've always loved going to the cinema, but I never saw it as something that I would pursue a career in. But then in my later teens, I started doing a bit of drama, theatre. I joined a theatre company just for something different to do. But I found out pretty quickly that I wasn't going to become an actor. But I did quite a lot of work in the theatre group behind the scenes, you know, be it doing costume, be it doing art, be it doing everything, which gave me a little insight, and I quite enjoyed it. But still, I never really thought of it as a career move. A couple of years later, I was living in Spain, which I went out to Spain to learn the language. And then I came back to London, then went out to France to do the same thing. And it was while I was living in Paris for about 6 weeks. I was just having a walk along the Champs-Élysées, and I came across a film set, and I was just mesmerised by it. I was just blown away with all the people working on the set, the lights.
Did you know who it was? Did you know which film it was?
I literally, it was all cordoned off. So I went and stood by the barriers, just looking at what was happening. And I saw, you know, there was a person in a yellow vest who was working on the production. So I called them over and I said, what's the shoot? And they said it was a scene from Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I just sat there, I just stood there looking at this film set for about an hour and a half. And in my mind, I thought, right, that's what I want to do. That's what I don't know how to go about it. I don't know how to do it. But literally the following week, I came back to London to, you know, work out how can I get myself on a film set. There was a friend of my brother's who was working in a facility house. Very quickly, a facility house is where they have all types of cameras and they get hired out for film and TV.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, and he was working as a driver, delivering the cameras. And he said to me, well, what you have to do is you've got to become a runner. And I said, what the hell is a runner? You know, I can run, but what is a runner? And he said, well, a runner is basically, you know, you do everything. You're a gopher. You make the tea, you do all of that, you know, but it's a really good way to get yourself on a film set. There's loads of living in London. We have the benefit that there are production companies said, you know, you've got to go to a production company to become a runner. There's loads of production companies in London. You've basically just got to contact them and see if you can get work as a runner.
What you did then? Did you go knocking on doors?
I got a little CV made up. And I mean, there's this book he told me called The Knowledge. So this is pre-internet days.
Yeah.
He said, you've got to go to the library. And I was like, okay. And in the reference section, you'll find this book called The Knowledge. And with this book, they list pretty much every production company in London, well, in the UK, but certainly in London.
Now, there's the equivalent, like you can just do a search, TV production companies, and you just get a list on, you know, any search engine, right?
On any search engine. So, like I say, this was pre-internet, so your search engine is the reference section of a library. So I did it quite methodically. I found production companies around London, you know, mainly around Soho, and decided to choose 5 or 6 a day. and would literally go around knocking on doors saying, have you got any work as a runner? Have you got any work as a runner? Have you got any work as a runner? Handed in my CV, until one of them cracked and said, yeah, actually we have. And so that's kind of
what I love about your story. First, that moment of inspiration. I mean, it seemed so monumental when you were in Paris and you came across that shooting, you know, the film scene on the street. And then to learn it's Martin Scorsese is like, wow. And then after that, your commitment, I mean, it's second to none. You were committed to getting that job and getting a break into the business, right?
It is. It's one of those things that, there are times in your life, where you get a moment, and it kind of happened that day in Paris, because I do remember I was learning a bit of French. I was trying to get work, and I was feeling a little bit low, and it was one of those. I was walking down by the left bank by the River Seine, and thinking, what am I doing? What do I want to do? Having no idea. And it was, I mean, it could be a film script itself, coming across this film set. And I know they're quite common sights now. I mean, they were probably quite common back then, but there's still a magic about you. You're seeing this set. You're seeing the big lights. You're seeing the camera was on a crane, I think. You're seeing all of these people working around, creating this, and it was like, oh my goodness, what is that? And it was like a little bit like a bolt in the blue. It was
well, the thing is, you were asking yourself that question, and it got answered.
It got answered.
So listen, for a lot of people watching today, they might not know what a cinematographer is, and also a cinematographer is also known as a director of photography. Can you very briefly describe what it means? What is a cinematographer?
In short, what a cinematographer or director of photography does, they're, same role. Your job as a cinematographer is to visualize, to put on screen what is in the director's mind, but also not just visualize that vision, but to also elevate that vision as well through processes of collaboration.
Fantastic. That's clear. And what are the fundamentals to being a director of photography? What kind of skills and what kind of personal traits do you need to have in order to do that job?
I mean, there's two things. There's the technical. So there are things with what I love about what I do. It's an art form. It's a creative art form. It's also a technical art form. So you are creating this world and this vision, what's in the director's mind. So you need to know about lighting. You need to know about how you can manipulate light and how you can create light. You also need, to know about cameras, and you need to know about lenses as well, because those are the three elements that go into the process of creating this world. So, different cameras, different lenses, different types of lights.
Well, the thing is, that's quite technical, and that's very specific knowledge that you need to have in order to become a DOP. I mean, what were your steps to becoming a DOP? Where did you start in order to find that pathway to get into that role?
Yeah, so when I way back when I, once I started getting a little bit of a foothold as a runner, I didn't, the idea of being a DOP was. I didn't know what a DOP did. I just wanted to be on set because I loved the camaraderie. I loved the energy of being on a film set. So I was getting work as a runner, but then from that, I started seeing the different departments of that create a program or that create a film. So you've got, cameras, you've got lighting, you've got sound, you've got art department, you've got production. Production is, what pulls the whole set together. So I was getting the more jobs I did as a runner, I was getting an insight into the different departments. And I had a little flavor of all of the departments. I became, on certain shows, I was running on a game show, which had all these departments. So I aligned myself to the technical crew. So I kind of became their runner. After doing that for about a year or so, on and off, I looked at the camera department and I thought, ooh, I quite like what the camera team does. I quite, the idea of, you're right in the forefront of this, and you're creating these pictures. So by then, I'd gotten to know a few people that worked in the camera department, and they said to me, "Well, you know, what you have to do is become a camera trainee." Again, you know, so it's one step up from running, but you're part of the camera department, and that's you know, so when you start learning the ins and outs of the equipment, primarily different cameras, different lenses. Back then, also, most of it was on film. So learning how to deal with the different film formats, which are, you know, Super 16 and 35 mil. So I did that for about a year. And then within the camera department, you've got various grades of assisting. So I kind of worked my way up through the different grades of assisting over, you know, which I did over about 10, 12 years or so, until I start, you know, and it's, you know, you've got to get work in those grades as well. And I was actually quite happy working as a technician, basically as a film technician, you know, as an assistant, which I loved. Still the thought of becoming a DP, because I worked with DPs, and, you know, I was like, oh, that sounds really complicated. It looked really complicated. You know, that's but you see the results, you think, oh, my goodness, that is, you know. So the thought of the pressure as well, you know, wasn't something I was completely into. But then I started shooting smaller jobs when I was an assistant, and again, you kind of get a bit of a bug, and you think, I'm actually quite liking this. I'm actually quite liking it. So I started, you know, while I was still assisting, I was then shooting smaller jobs, very small jobs for, you know, different people, until I got to a stage where I thought, actually, this is really what I want to do now. I want to
and of course, the small jobs turn into big jobs, and
small jobs turn into big jobs. And then, you know, you make a decision that, okay, I've got to stop assisting now, because this is how far I've come in this journey. I want to expand my knowledge. I want to, you know, carve out my career as a DOP. And that's what I did.
I'd just like to ask you about the technicals of, you know, what you learned. So did you go to film school to learn how to operate cameras and learn about lighting? How did it work?
No, I didn't go to film school. I mean, I kind of knew of film schools, but film schools, you know, are very costly. They're quite expensive. I certainly didn't have the money. But what I learned it on set. I mean, you know, which is invaluable, because you're working with different people, and different people within that department have different experiences and have different ways. I mean, I'm not film school. Film school certainly has its benefits,
yeah,
because, you know, you get to work in an environment with, you know, other professionals, and you get to film, and you learn all about film theory, you learn about the history, but also you hands-on experience in film school. You can make mistakes without them being too costly. But for me, it wasn't an avenue that I kind of thought of or could afford to.
So you learned on the job, essentially.
I learned on the job.
Yeah. So tell me about your job. You know, you talked about pressure. I've worked with lots of DOPs. We've worked together as well on some shoots. Yeah. And talk to me about the pressure side of it, and also talk to me about what are the challenges in your role. What kind of things do you have to manage?
I mean, you know, as a DOP cinematographer, you're the head of your department. You're head of the camera department. It's hugely collaborative, which is what I love. But so one of the challenges is when you're working with a director, because your director is the closest person, you know, you're going to be working with, and you're trying to, you know, visualize what the director's vision is. And that's done through obviously a process of talking. It's done through a process of, you know, sketching, of writing, of, you know, just you've got to kind of get on a similar wavelength.
So relationships, you know, building relationships, and
it's building relationships. It's you know, building experiences, because you're always learning as well. I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, if you're working with directors that are quite new, there's personal skills as well that you have to learn and develop, because
for example,
there are sometimes, you know, with some directors know what they want, but it's quite difficult to extract that information or get across what they want. So, you know, you have to, you know, you enter into a little bit of a game of trying to find out what they want, you know, and, you know, developing that rapport. Some directors know exactly what they want, know exactly how they want to do it, and, you know, might not want much insight or much, you know, prodding from you.
yeah.
So you work with different personalities all the time. Do you see what I mean? You know,
so you got to adjust and weave and dodge.
Yeah, and you know, you're bobbing and weaving, aren't you? And it's like, how you get on with that person, which is, again, actually, to very quickly one of the skills you do need are personal skills as well, and you've got to show an enthusiasm, and you've got to be open to different people, and, you know, just try and get, you know, a friendly, enthusiastic demeanor is as big a plus as technical skills. You've got to be able to talk to each other. And if you're like-minded, and if you can have a laugh and you can have a joke, and you know, you're on a similar stream, you get on with people, then that process will become easier. I mean, it's no secret that and you can probably speak to a lot of DOPs, that a lot of directors that they work with fairly regularly are friends as well. Do you see what I mean? You know,
I think when you get on with people and they like, and you can engage in kind of how they want and what they want to do things, that builds the rapport that you were talking about.
It builds the rapport, and especially
they're going to call you back. They're going to call you back for a job if they get on with you. You know, and that's kind of how this works.
Yeah.
So now, for those people watching who would like to kind of follow in your footsteps, what advice do you have for them to give? Say if they want to start shooting some short films or some sort of video content, what advice can you give them? And then, you know, young people, you know, they don't have access to all the big cameras and lights that you have.
So, I mean, certainly when I first started, you know, as a runner 25 years ago, technology has moved on in leaps and bounds. And again, finding like-minded people to work with, especially now on the internet, you can, you know, there's many avenues open.
There's so many film groups out there, and all kinds of film groups. And,
you will find your people. But also, you know, now this little baby here, this iPhone, it's not just a phone. It's not a phone anymore. You know, you can create beautiful pictures from this device, which makes it so accessible. And, you know, buying fairly inexpensive editing suites as well. So you can create a movie from your living room, which has been proved over the last few years.
Yeah.
But along with that as well, the craft of cinematography is a developing thing. With technology, with scope, you're learning all the time. If you start thinking that you know it all, it's probably time to give up, because there's always something, and there's always someone who is going to show you a different way or another way. Think, oh, actually, that's, you know. But there are still a couple of fundamentals, which is wanting to learn about light and learn about cameras and learn about lenses.
And how can somebody who hasn't encountered doing lighting just...
So what I would suggest is visiting, well, it's quite hard to do it now, but you can do it online. Galleries, art galleries, photographic galleries. As much artwork and photographic work as you can see, you're not going to like. It's so subjective, art is. You're going to be drawn to certain pieces, but the pieces of art or photography that do capture you, then study them. Study why they're capturing, study why that image is impacting you, and if it's impacting you in a certain way, then look at how that image is composed, look at how it's framed, look at how the lighting is. If it's art, look at how, if it's an artwork, look at how that light has been, where that light source or light sources are coming from, and why they're coming from. Why is it impacting you on, and get that, get those, the pieces of art and pieces of photography that you will like, but also look at the pieces of photography that you don't like, pieces of art that you don't like, and why they're not grabbing you, because everything is created, and you then weave that into your work as well.
Well, so take all that as inspiration and try and recreate or use it in your own work, right?
Yeah, it's there are times when I'm prepping for a shoot, and I'll be talking to a director, and we will always reference stuff. It's like, oh, this scene from this film, or this scene, or this piece of art that I want to do, this Rembrandt that's here, this Leonardo da Vinci that's here, this Gordon Parks image that's here, but that's not to say you don't want to just copy it, but you might want to evoke a similar feeling. You might want, and you bend and you stretch, and it's like, let's do it this way. It's a which you then use to create your original piece.
Yeah, your masterpiece. So tell me, Damian, just to wrap up, for all those young people who want to get a career in TV, radio, and film, very briefly, what is the best piece of advice that you can give to them?
Best piece of advice is to be open-minded, be enthusiastic, ask questions. I mean, if you do, there are forums, and there are shows like this that Samina's doing, that you are doing, where professionals are coming into, and we are, well, I can personally, we are accessible. You can find avenues to contact people.
Social media being for one.
Social, exactly. And never be afraid to ask questions. Ask those questions, because I'm not saying we've all got the answers, but I could get asked a certain question for an answer that I don't know, that will lead me into actually working, finding the answer as well. But creating dialogue, I believe, having the enthusiasm, being open-minded, and asking questions.
Essentially connecting with people in the business. Well,
sorry, say that again.
You've been an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing your story and giving all this invaluable advice. Really appreciated.
Thank you, Samina. Loved it.
I hope you were inspired by Damian, especially if you want to work in the camera departments. If you've got any questions you want to ask me, or you want me to pose to any of my guests, or you want to make a comment about what, the interview that you've been a guest also of today, then feel free to leave me a message, post a comment, and I'll do my best to respond to you all. If you want more details of my series, How to Get into TV, Radio and Film, then feel free to follow me across my social media platforms and on YouTube, where I post regularly who I'm connecting with and when. And until then, see you next time, and thank you so much for joining me.